Hello, welcome to my channel. Today we'll be talking about, in basic science, we'll be talking about characteristics of living things. These are the things, the features we have as living things, either as a plant or an animal. All living things have the ability to move about. So the first characteristic we'll be talking about is movement. Living things move about. Like man moves around, animals move around, and then plants also move around. So how do plants move? This is an example of movement in plants. It is called phototropism. It is found in photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the way plants are able to produce their food with the use of sunlight. So this particular picture is reflecting a case where a plant is growing in the direction of light. You understand? You can have an experiment where you put a plant, a growing plant, in a box and cover it up, and then cut a little place open where light comes in. You find out that when you open the box eventually, the plant will be growing towards the place where the light is coming from. So that is an example of movement in plants. Plants are able to move towards the direction of light. That is one example of movement. Living things, all living things move. That is the first characteristics. Another characteristics we want to talk about is that all living things are made up of cells. All living things are made up of cells, whether they are plants or animals. We have unicellular organisms, that's organisms that have just one cell, and there are multicellular organisms. Most, like human being, has multiple cells, but all living things are made up of cell. The first characteristic we discussed was movement. We said all living things move around, and the second one is that all living things are made up of cells. The next one we want to talk about is respiration. Respiration, the way we breathe. All living things breathe. Now in this picture we can see a woman breathing. Human beings breathe in oxygen and they pass out carbon dioxide. We breathe in oxygen and the waste is carbon dioxide. Then you now find out that carbon dioxide that we have passed out is taken in by plants while they pass out oxygen. So that makes it possible for us to be able to give them carbon dioxide and they are able to give us oxygen. Do you understand? So that's why they want, it's advised that we plant trees around us to make our cycle complete. The next characteristics of living thing we'll be talking about is nutrition. All living things eat or feed in one form or the other. So we have talked about movement. We have said that all living things are made up of cells. We have talked about respiration, the way we breathe, and we are talking about nutrition now, the fact that all living things feed, eat. Now the next one we want to talk about is what we call irritability. Irritability. All living things respond to stimulus. Stimulus is a signal to which an organism responds. Let me explain. If I ask you to close your eyes and you stretch your hand, and I take pin, I pierce your hand, what's the first thing you will do? You will withdraw your hand immediately. If there is a pot of soup in your mommy's kitchen and you assume that the pot is going to be cold because it's been long she cooked, not knowing that in between she had come in to warm the pot, and you're like, I'm hungry, what will I eat? You just touch the pot and you find out it's very hot. What's the first thing you will do? You immediately drop it. Nobody tells you to drop it. your body is only responding to stimulus. That's irritability. Your body has responded to what you were not expecting. You understand? You are walking on the road and then you see a snake. Nobody's going to tell you to run. You understand? You find out that suddenly you have the energy you were not thinking of before, and then you rush off. That is stimulus. All living things respond to stimulus. But there are ways that plants respond to stimulus because they are plants. There are some plants. There's a plant they call touch me not, that when you touch, it claps or it closes. That's response to stimulus. And in this picture, we are seeing a plant that is opening up to take warm. This is another form of responding to stimulus. So all living things respond to stimulus. Another thing is that all living things grow. All living things grow. We can see in this picture a baby growing to a young girl and to a woman. We can see an animal, I think it's a cat, growing from one level to another, and we can see a plant growing until it becomes a big tree. This is the growth process of a butterfly. Egg to larva, larva to pupa, pupa to imago, which we call the full-grown butterfly. So all living things grow. So we've talked about movement. We've said that all living things are made up of cells. We've talked about respiration. We've talked about nutrition. We've talked about irritability. We've talked about growth. So now I want to talk about reproduction. All living things reproduce themselves. They give birth to themselves. Human beings will give birth to human beings. Plants will reproduce and we have more plants. You understand? Animals will reproduce and we have more animals. If not for reproduction, the world would have ended. You understand? But when living things give birth to their young ones, then there is continuity. The old ones will die. So reproduction is the process of giving birth or producing their own kind. It's part of the characteristics of living things. And then this is excretion. Excretion is the way we pass out waste. Just like we said, living things eat. When we eat, the food goes through the process of digestion. The body takes the part needed for growth. You understand? And the part that is not needed has to leave the body. That is the process of excretion, passing out waste. The human beings pass out waste in three ways: either through urine or urea, or as feces. You understand? Or when we sweat. When we sweat out waste. When we urinate, we are passing out waste. And when we excrete, we are also passing out waste. This is a cow passing out waste. So that is excretion. Now, all living things die. Plants die, animals die, human beings die. Death is a characteristic of living thing. Finally, adaptation. Living things are able to adapt to their environment for the purpose of surviving. You understand? Living things are able to adapt to their environment. Whenever there's a change in our environment, we are able to adapt. Whenever there is evil, the tortoise will enter its shell. That's adaptation. Whenever there is cold, as human beings, we are able to cover up ourselves. Whenever there is heat, we are able to expose ourselves. So you find out that no matter what happens in the environment, living things are able to adapt. So those are the characteristics of living things. Can we mention it together? Movement. Living things. All living things move. All living things are made up of cells. Then we have respiration. All living things breathe. Human beings breathe in oxygen and pass out carbon dioxide, while plants take in carbon dioxide and they pass out oxygen. So what other thing did we talk about? We talked about nutrition. All living things feed. We talk about irritability. We say irritability is the way we respond to stimulus. And I said whenever a thing you are not expecting happens to you, you are in shock. That is irritability. We have irritability in plants too. So we talked about that. Then we talked about can we continue? Okay. So we talked about irritability. We talked about growth. We say all living things grow. We talk about excretion. We say all living things pass out waste. We talked about reproduction. We say living things produce their likes. And we talked about death. All living things die. Adaptation. Living things are able to adapt to their environment. That is the end of the lesson. Thank you.